Salma Khurshid. Khurshid is a seasoned product person with around 16 plus years of industry experience. She's a product management enthusiast and a designer thinker. She's passionate about her work and loves working on products that touches life. She is a ex-Philip product manager with expertise on building, shipping, and monetizing enterprise solutions. So I would like to hand over the session to Salma Khurshid, and she'll take the session forward from here. Over to you, Salma Khurshid.
So good evening and good morning, everyone who are, joining us live from outside of India. Welcome yet again with another insightful fireside chat session on product design with a very talented speaker today. As you know, we are celebrating the month of informed women, women who are deeply involved in creating innovative products. And these sessions in which we try to get insights about their inspiring journey and learn as much as we can. So I'm very glad that we have Rupashree N here with us today. Rupashree is a E-shaped professional with experience and expertise and with a zest of exploration leading to fine execution. For ease, you see. She's a techno-creative person with 10 plus years of experience in designing strategy and solution for digital initiatives. Design thinking and user experience design had been her forte. She has a wide variety of industrial experience as well, starting from BNF, insurance, healthcare, you name it all, I think, education, retail, automobile, corporate intranets, entertainment, etc. She helps businesses identify and prioritize opportunities to transform customer experiences. So welcome, Rupashree. We are glad to have you here today.
Hey, thanks, Khurshid. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. I hope all of you are doing fine. And I'm so thankful to Institute of Product Leadership for this opportunity. And I think this is a very wonderful initiative that these guys have brought in. Definitely needed a talk around women in product design and management. And this one was like a very good initiative from them. Kudos to them. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Rupashree. So without much ado, let us get started with our chat today. So tell us a little more about yourself. I mean, I did give the introduction, but let us know a little more about yourself in terms of your journey into product design, how it all started, things and people who have inspired you and all.
Right. So I think I've been, following a couple of last videos, and unfortunately, my history also tends to be the same: a developer turned designer and a manager kinds. But yeah, it all started off with the love for computers that I had started growing in the initial days when we had those box kind of computers with keyboards and floppy disks and hard disks. Oh my god, it sounds so ancient now when we're talking about. But yeah, it started off with those days, and in the school age when the subject hadn't gotten introduced, it was like very fascinating, and I would not miss like even one class, and like so enthusiastic about it. And that is when people kind of started motivating me that this is the field that you should take up and all of that. And coding was like my thing, and that was the space where I started growing my interest towards this. But slowly and gradually, I experienced that there were more than only writing code in front of a laptop. So that's when it kind of seeded in, and design kind of has been an intuition, and from the kind of upbringing that I have had, I've always seen my father solving petty issues at homes, probably every household might have, and the solution would have been so simple, like from made out of the things that were lying around in the house. So then it kind of struck me, all right, these kind of problems probably people do not even realize that are there, that exist. You usually call out a plumber or an electrician or a carpenter, and then make them fix those things. But there were smaller things that he could solve, and that kind of seeped in the childhood, and that is how it all started. Every time I had some notion of visual, some notion of function. So I believe left and right brain worked together. So that kind of holds my personality, and then the learning journey started. So this was, I remember, probably one of my few jobs where I had this mentor who would encourage in learning 30 minutes for every day, and that summed up to changing the career alternative altogether. He identified the kind of caliber that I was bringing the kind of capacity that I was getting on the table, and then the motivation and inspiration, and I've learned a bit from everybody and started to grow altogether from there. So yeah, that has been the start of the journey as such, and then there was no stopping behind and looking behind. So yeah.
Great. I mean, it's so heartening to hear that, when your left and right brain align and gets inspiration from the family. And I think all of us can relate to that. We have something, I mean, some learning from the family, and that is how we take it forward. And not to mention, which you mentioned, that there have to be, mentors at workplace as well who, inspire you. And yeah, yeah. And thanks for that perspective. Now, tell us, Rupashree, about what a great product designer, as per your definition, and um, what do they need to know? What should be their capabilities, etc.
Um, like an ideal product designer, I don't think there is anyone, because when we call ourselves product designer, we're likely to have the journey and experience of failures and wins. And so skill set, from skill set point of view, I don't consider learning tools as a skill set altogether. But what matters to me most is the level of thinking. How much are you able to think about a given problem, and how much are you able to decipher from that, and what level of broadening and narrowing down that you can do with that problem statement. Probably that is what I'm looking for, and that does not need a degree or a skill set as such. So thinking is very difficult to measure though, but that is what kind of brings out what you have most when you call yourself a problem solver or a product designer. So that is what I look at. Even when we are hiring designers for the team, I keep the qualification part aside. I keep the case study part aside, and give them a problem in hand and try to understand what level of thinking are they at. If they can think of it rationally, logically, give me good design arguments about their choices. I think that convinces me for them being a good product designer.
Wow, wow. I mean, yeah, I mean, we sometimes, stop thinking that you need to have a design degree from a reputed institute to get into these kind of role. But what matters is what I think is common sense, and thinking about the problem in the right perspective, and how creatively you can solve it with minimum resources. I mean, that is what it is,
Right.
right?
Right, and found guilty as charged. I'm also one of those people who did not have any design degree as such, but the kind of atmosphere or the era that we had been learning from, probably design schools were not even existent.
Right.
So design degree is something that I can't count on myself. So that's why I kind of give a leeway. But even from the experience that I've seen, that people or the newbies who have been learning from the design schools and coming in, they know the process. But like we say, until and unless that learning is immersive and you've had experiences of creating and being in that situation and creating solutions out of it, none of the textbooks give it all. So experience talks is the kind of belief that I hold on to.
Sure, sure. Now tell our audience, Rupashree, the top three reasons why one should become a product designer.
uh, Love solving problems, love function plus visual aesthetics of things, and love bossing around and finding faults of other people, please feel free to join product design. It's a lovely space to be in, where you can find your own faults, you can find others' faults. I mean, when I say faults, of course, it turns down to bugs and specs and all of that, but it's a happy place to be in.
Even I have heard the designer community is quite cohesive, and they're quite open to feedbacks. They don't really mind, people, taking out faults in their design. They're very open to feedback and very accommodating, and they learn because they have this open mind of, yeah, we are learning every day, and each solution can be new, inquisitive, and that is how it should be. And
Right. Right, definitely. The thing is, for every other domain, and I might be stereotyping and generalizing here, but the learning has been, say, I-shaped, like deep down in one direction. But for a designer, it is never that way. It is like you have a deep knowledge of one vertical, and then you have a lateral, like a T shape, right?
T,
You have
T.
to know something about every other thing around. And like you initially also spent a little time in introducing me, if you could say that we've solved problems from entertainment, from banking, and a lot of complexity that lies around in the world. And understanding those domains and their specificity and their requirements, and then trying to implement design thinking principles on top of that to solve those problems, kind of creates that impact. So yeah.
Super. Now, since we are talking about, career, I'm asking this question for the folks who are, interested to, turn this path. What is the growth aspects here? I mean, how do you see how you start and see yourself growing? What is the growth path here?
So I think
And is it easy?
Easy if you're
Easy in the sense,
enjoying. Hmm.
yeah, if you can relate to the other functions, right? We have a say for product managers, you become senior product managers, director of product manager, and that is how you go. What is the growth path here for product designers?
I think when we talk about growth path, again, coming back to my thinking analogy, the deeper that you can think, the more that you can analyze. That makes you collaborate more, because more analysis brings in a lot of aspect of dependency from other teams as well, and how cohesively when a timeline or a deliverable needs to be run behind, how cohesively that can come together. So that is the learning process. And when I talk about growth chart, like I said, you start off with learning one level deeper in design, and then you kind of broaden your surface with other domain knowledges, and then that kind of gradually gets shaped into an E or an X, and whatever kind of professionists that we want to call ourselves. But that is how you grow. So one a lot of times I've found that these newbies kind of get overwhelmed with the fanciest terms and the terminologies that are being used, and then they're overwhelmed saying, I don't know this, I don't know enough if I should be in a position to hold a conversation in front of these people. So I think that needs to be taken back, and the confidence of that you're thinking right, you're in the right direction, and if your ideas and thoughts liberate with the vision of the product, then I think all is solved. So more than growth strategy, let's focus on becoming a better designer. And the bonus part is that this is the kind of industry where you don't have that corporate ladder usually that you want to climb up to. And a 15-year experienced guy could be a principal, and a 2-year experienced guy could be a director. So that corporate ladder is not something that we're fighting for. We're fighting for becoming a better problem solver here. So that is the growth track that I see it, and designations really don't matter. You make yourselves capable enough to reach up to your goal milestones that you've set for your career growth, and that is what matters the most at the end of the day.
Super.
Makes
So
sense? Yeah.
yeah, it does make sense, and a lot of people will like it. I'm already getting influenced with.
Yeah.
And now that we know a little more about your journey and about this particular area in the
Mhm.
career perspective. Let us go a little more deep. And if audience you have questions around the career path, put your questions in the Q&A. We'll take it at the end if we have missed something and you want to know more about it. um, so let us next go to the question where you tell us about the the process you go through when you have to come up um, uh, with a design and maybe with an example.
Right. Now, that's a very difficult as well as easy question to answer. Um, Easy because you would find a lot of design processes online, and that ultimately remains the same. It is just that you tweak it according to the situation that you're in. And difficult because I've worked in service design industry, I've worked in product development companies, product led companies, and everywhere the process has been very different. So
Right.
the current process that we usually follow is that half of the research is done before it reaches the design stage, and the product manager and the product strategists have already researched upon it, brainstormed upon it. They've thought about why it is important, and all the prioritization and all of those are done. And the team takes that as an input, runs around of their research. Now, this research does not have to be very elaborate. They just have to, be narrowed down to the problem at hand. But I've also had experiences where clients would give you like just one umbrella statement, and from there you will have to like build it up and use all your resources on the internet and put them together. So that, and then you put together your thinking, put together a wire flow, put together a wireframe on top of that. Uh, Use data to back up your thinking and design decisions, and yeah, those are the kind of things that it takes to create a well established first cut. And then we go through the round of feasibility testing, and then dev feasibility, and so the link, the steps kind of are the same. It is just that based on the complexity of the problems that you have in hand, you tweak and you decide how much time that you want to spend in each step, or probably how much weightage that you want to give at every level. So that kind of brings in the outcome. So those, knowing the process is very easy because it is straightforward, but those tweaking in the thinking that you do at every level, which changes the decisions that you're taking at every juncture, probably that is what defines a process. And that goes case to case basis, standard process, whatever available on internet, but that is the experience that you bring in when you're a part of the design team.
So when you're making these decisions, I mean, that is important. I mean, we have seen in internet and we know with our experience that design thinking has different version also, depending
Correct.
upon, the context and the complexity. You apply whatever is fitting that situation and coming up with those iteration. But then when it comes to decision making, uh,
Hmm.
in your experience, where does a product designer, um, of course they have a say, but where it matters most in what aspects? Because here there would be stakeholders who would be their business stakeholders would be there, your product manager would be there, would influence, and you yourself. So uh, basically, what are the aspects in which your decision making matters the most?
um,
Maybe I could just make the question in a way that product manager has given a requirement, you've come up with the wireframes, and there's a they say that no, this wireframe is not good enough for us because the requirement is such and such. But however, I mean, from your experience, the designer would understand the requirement very well, and that is how from the user experience or the usability perspective they would have come up with a design, but the product manager is not able to get that. I'm talking about a conflict situation here, but these would be the day-to-day things, right? How do you go about those kind
Yeah,
of?
yeah, tons of those kind of situations that we go through every day, every hour. So yeah, whenever we send out the first cut, we expect people to react. So some of them are very proactive kinds, and they would say that these are the situations that we are solving for. But some of them would never have that idea. So I usually always categorize people into two parts: proactive and reactive. So the proactive ones are very easy to convince, no conflict situations, but the reactive ones are the difficult ones to attack, because the first cut will not get you the kind of feedback that would close your journey or designs as such. So that's when I kind of go with alternatives, saying I have three chain of thoughts, and three being an ideal number for me, because not two, not less kinds, three chain of thoughts. And based on these three chain of thoughts, these are the propositions that we have. And then I usually back them up with pros and cons of what will happen if you choose this design, and what are you going to miss when you reject this one. So then that gives a good narrative to the decision maker or stakeholder in this case, saying, all right, so what are the trade-offs that I'm okay to make, right? So that kind of brings in, and conflict situations, trust me, the dev team works in, the PMGs work in, the stakeholders, the customers, and there are so many perspectives and thoughts that we're dealing with. As a designer, a lot of times I think that I act as a mediator in resolving those conflicts every time. But yeah, that is the situation that a designer has to face on an everyday basis, saying, all right, this is your problem, this I can solve with this tactic, and this is the problem that they have. So then you bring all of those people together, slice and dice the designs again, and finalize what could solve each one of their problems, and what could be together, what could be a mutual trade-off that each department is all right to take, so that whatever you have visualized could go ahead and see the light of the day. So those kind of conflicts are always vocal. You talk them out. That is where your negotiation and convincing skills come very handy. So yeah, those kind of discussions keep happening. A lot of data that helps in saying even for a discussion of which feature to pick, right? So you would have gotten this umbrella statement saying this is the app that you want to build, or this is the portal that you want to build. What is it that you want to prioritize? That also kind of starts ending up in a huge discussion. And then these prioritization techniques and those fancy terms that I was talking about that overwhelms me. Those come in handy. Learn that over a period of time, apply them, and then try convincing people, saying, and the best part is that I've worked with a lot of bankers, sitting beside one of them for sure, but worked with a lot of bankers. So then they understand zeros and ones. They understand Excel sheets, numbers. So that is where I picked it up, saying whenever we are talking design, we call it an art, but it also has to be backed up by a lot of science, a lot of research that goes in, a lot of statistics that goes in, a lot of industry benchmarking that goes in. Oh, if Google has been doing it, let's try it out. It might work for our customers as well. Amazon has got the best search engine according to the statistics. Let's try out an Amazon way. So those all aspects also try and help convince stakeholders, saying we're doing it right. So, and a lot of times conflict management also brings a lot of metaphor mapping, if you can relate to. Once it happened that I convinced a PMG with a metaphor of how we cook in the kitchen and how we pull in ingredients and create the platter that we want to. So those kind of real life examples also help in convincing the stakeholders. So like I said, negotiation and convincing capabilities, learn it. If have not started, visit the market, and that's the best place to get started for sure. So yeah, so that's my take on it.
You know what, Rupashree, when you're explaining, I was thinking, this is the woman's world. I mean, so
Surely is, undoubtedly.
now you touched upon very two important things. One is data. So there is a lot of material on data-driven design and all that. But I am again on the conflict part of it. There would be certain situation, a particular person or a product manager would say that, I would go with my gut feeling. right?
Hmm.
I do not believe in data at all. The gut feeling has always worked for me. And there would be someone who will be telling that, no, I am data driven, no matter. I mean, there would be a very trivial problem. You do not really want data, but there would be, there would be, no, 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 I want to see data. So sometimes what happens, this analysis paralysis happens. So how do you, you know, get
Um,
away with those kind of things? I'm sure there would be many.
yeah, I'm definitely, and I think I'm also one of them who kind of have this constant juggle between gut feeling and the statistics. But fortunately, every time that the gut says something, there is some kind of data that you try and find to prove yourself right or wrong. And that is when I think ideal situation of creating a hypothesis and then proving that yourself right or wrong kind of comes in, starting off the basic fundamental of research. And that is what I also tend to implement in a lot of situation. And according to me, there are layers of gut feeling versus data driven design. So how, when does data help us? So you pull out a chunk of data and then try to analyze them. It gives you a perspective where you can narrow down the business problem, and then the gut feeling actually helps you design better for it. So if I have to give you an example, we were creating this portal for Aditya Birla, and we were actually working for the rural part of the country. And then we pulled out a lot of analytics saying what kind of devices do they use. These cities would be considered to be, say, rural part of the country, and then what kind of devices do they use, what kind of connection do they have, what kind of plan they are in. All of those kind of gave us an insight that USSD is the platform that we should start building for, right? So data always helps you narrow down, but when you are actually designing it, every time you cannot go and check with the user if this decision of mine is right or wrong. And there you would only have like a few traits and personality from the persona, which would give you a subtle idea of how that person would be thinking about it. So when that is the situation that you're in, that is when your gut feeling kind of comes in very handy, saying, I have seen these many people behave in these fashion, and if this is the if this is what the data is saying, then probably this should be the decision that I must take, right? So it kind of goes hand in hand, and data has always helped me narrow down the big problem to a smaller one, and then gut feeling has always helped me take design decisions better when I'm deciding smaller chunks. So that's
And
the, yeah.
great. I mean, during this gut feeling thing, because it's a term which is little risky for me,
True.
that that can lead up to a bit of biasness, because whatever be the experience, we always, we the amount we do not know is quite a lot what we know really, right? So
Definitely.
when we talk about gut and in small things we use our experience, I do it a lot of time, and I'm sure a lot of people do it. But in the design perspective, that would also lead to a bit of biasness. So
True.
how do you go about it? You just put that as an assumption and validate it, or how that works?
Yeah, so assumption and validate, definitely. That's why I was talking about hypothesis and getting that validated part. But also on top of that, um, what I usually tend to do is, with my gut feeling being in center, evaluate both the options. If this was right, what would happen? If this was wrong, what would happen? And then create options for myself. And that is when A/B testing and usability testing comes handy, right? So if my gut feeling has gone right or wrong, a closed group that we can validate those designs with, where you have more eyes looking at them, more perspectives drawing them, they come handy. And that is where you can easily fail and go back and say, oh yeah, this I did not think. And trust me, doing and the thinking part are very different aspects in my head. So when I'm doing, I might not be thinking very well, And when I'm thinking, I do not want to do things because they kind of clash with each other and the thinking remains incomplete. So that is where I kind of go back to the team, a bunch of say 10 odd people, and figure out if whatever I'm trying to do you resonate with it, or if the hypothesis that I have created based on my gut feeling, if internet has got some work done already, say probably a ton of other apps or other products who might have followed the same path, then I have data saying 3 of these big customers have already been doing it. So I kind of backtrack it with the gut feeling, going back to the statistics, and statistics going back to the gut feeling. So there has to be a validation for sure. You cannot risk it based on a, I mean, who's going to believe it, right? Like we are working with 500 odd people, 1,000 odd people, and then there are so many customers who are actually paying us for the product that we are providing them. So then nobody's going to believe that, Rupashree, yeah, you had this gut feeling, and then we've created something based on that. So then you have to validate that. You have to show it to different people at some level. If it is crude, then it gets rolled back and say, this is not working out, we will have to do something else, right? And my utmost funda always has been that if I am confused, if I do not have the right capacity to decide for myself, put it out in 3 options. And that has worked wonders for me, saying if my thinking has got deviation, like 2 parts to it, I use both of these parts to create option, ask for suggestions from people, take a voting or discuss it with people, and then come back to the drawing board again. So that kind of helps me take my decisions in a well-equipped way. And whenever I need to talk about my designs, I always have it backed up with research or logic or data, some tools that help me do that.
Super, super. There's a lot of insights here, Rupashree, because these are very important part, and how do you validate is very important, and you have to juggle and balance it out with both data and gut, and then validate at the end of the day to come up everybody in the same page and
Yeah.
go for it.
And I have to convince people like you, right? Who ask me things when we are deciding for. So then it makes sense to have all of them handy. And that's why I initially, when you also asked me about who is the ideal designer, like this is what I was thinking through in my head, saying whenever and also I was talking to one of my colleagues today, and this is what came out of that discussion, saying every person who's designing something is never wrong.
Yeah.
Right? His thinking is limited to that capacity. There are only a few things that he or she is exposed to. There are only this much that they could research on based on the given point of time, and based on whatever they know, whatever they have created is always right. As leaders, as managers, as supervisors, we are the ones who have to direct their thinking, tweak them to the perspective that we want them to go. And then that is when the deliverables and the designs keep changing. So it's not the newbie who's at fault, it is the vision of the product or the thinking that has not seeped into the member. That is what kind of makes a good designer. And that is why I always think, if you can think critically, if you can think about a problem in a certain way, if there are aspects and parameters that I can keep adding to your design problem, and you're able to navigate out of it easily and seamlessly, then you can do it all. You don't need a qualification attached to prove that. That's where I come from.
Right. And as leaders, we are supposed to bring up that culture, right? Wherein, the design thinking aspect has to be iterative, and it's okay to be wrong.
Yeah.
It's okay to fail. And the important aspect is we have to fail fast to pivot and change the direction and go about
Yes.
it. So yeah, some great insights here, Rupashree. The next one would be, now we have learned how things work in this design world. So tell us more, what is the toughest problem you faced, and how did you sail through? Toughest
Ah,
one.
that's a very tough question. I don't think I had any toughest
Or
problem
any
that.
or any which you have failed and have learned which can give some perspective to the viewers here. I mean, if it is
Uh,
okay, and there's no
I
NDA.
know. I know. I would love to talk about failures, but it has not been huge enough that
Okay.
would have costed me anything as such. But one of the design problems that I can talk about here is, like I was mentioning about Aditya Birla as such. So one of the biggest disappointments was, we worked say 1.5 year down with the company, and we were trying to build this perfect payments bank for them, and we had like nailed it down so well, and we were like waiting, say, keeping our fingers crossing when is the launch. And that is when we heard that the company got dissolved, and all our hopes went down the drain. But that is when I learned this very thing, saying as product designers, we kind of wear multiple hats. And the T-shaped thing that I was also telling you initially kind of come from there also. So when we were designing for the payments back, we had a lot of journeys there, saying, send money, bill payment, loans, insurance, and whatnot, like everything under hood. And the name being such a big brand in the company, they have like put their feet in every domain that you can name, right? So then what happened was there were so many apps already that they were that were hosted in the Play Store, and then we were creating a concept of app in app. Now the problem that we were facing there was every domain of theirs had so much in terms of onboarding a customer. So an insurance domain had so many fields that they wanted to take, loans section had so many details that they wanted to take, and similarly every other domain had so much that they wanted to take in. And if we were all right with them saying, we've made all the experiences and all the journeys very seamless, but then the onboarding part itself was so friction oriented, then how is a person supposed to get onboarded to the like, how will I open an account in the bank? So that part was like a very brain crunching, and we would like actually sit and pull our hairs, and there were so many like 20-25 odd people, stakeholders, who were waiting for us to bring out something, and along with the seniors of the company, and then we were like crunching our brains. So that is when we switched our hats from product or a UX UI or whatever design to a system design or a process design, or then we had to like put together all of those pieces like a jigsaw puzzle and bring together a standard unified process which could help each one of them. But that is where the conflict management and the change management also comes in play. Say, if this is going to change, what is the impact going to be in other aspects? If this is going to change, then how are these stakeholders going to react, right? So that was a very brain crunching situation, and trust me, after we went through that brainstorming session, we were able to create a 90-second onboarding journey, and that is the minimum that we could cut it down to. 90-second onboarding journey where you had to give us bare minimum details, and then we will not keep asking you at every juncture. We will only keep building your profile based on tiny bits that can come as and when is needed. So those kind of switching hats also keeps happening. So a product designer, sometimes I feel very awful when people walk in and say that, give me 2 screens and I'm good. But what does that even mean? There goes so much thinking, and 80 to 90% of product managerial things as well, collaboration with the development team, so much research that we bring in, and then 2 screens and we're good. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be offensive here, but those are the situations that we find ourselves every day. So wearing multiple hats, understanding multiple domains, how each one of them work, getting into the space of your clients or your company, understanding how procurement works, how banking functions, what are the ecosystem that they are sitting on top of. Sometimes a lot of decisions becomes very difficult when the underlying ecosystem or the architecture that it is being developed on is very restrictive. And then a lot of design decisions that we would have happily validated based on our hypothesis kind of goes for a toss. And those kind of situations is only, I mean, how to deal with those kind of situations, how do you navigate through these problems is only based on experience. And when you immerse yourself, when you go behind that problem and make that your focus and goal for life for a few days, that is when it kind of comes in. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think a lot of talking. Yeah, what's the next thing that
Yeah,
we want to
no,
talk
no,
about?
those are really, gems of information which has to be kept in mind when we are designing and a product overall. There has to be amalgamation of the system design as well, because that is very important. So when we tie up the user value, right? We product managers are hung upon user values. We want our customer first, thing, and the value proposition has to be there. But we also have to understand the customer interacts with the UI, the customer interacts with the interface that comes primarily from the product design, and collaborating with them uh, with the system design and everything together is very important to bring the best of the experience for our customer. With that, Rupashree, we'll go to the audience question. There are a couple of them.
Hmm.
One is by Vishrut. Vishrut
Mhm.
is he says, as a developer, designer, previously and now a product manager, how do you go about the product tech feasibility? Do you go just by end user perspective, market trends, etc., or do you think about this? Will this approach be feasible technically? I I can take that question up, Vishrut, if you want. So tech feasibility typically would be done by the product manager along with the dev team, along with the set of architects you have. And if that feasibility, is good enough, you say that no, it is possible to do it. You're able to provide the value proposition. You also have to do a viability. And then when it comes to usability, that really that value proposition will work. That is where Rupashree will come.
Mhm.
So Rupashree,
Yeah,
you can,
but yeah,
yeah.
an extension to that thought, definitely we rely heavily on the product management team to help us with that feasibility check and create a POC and see if whatever product thinking or vision that we have, if that can be actually an implementable solution. But on top of that, I would also want to add that I have every day connects with my development team,
Mm,
and it is very important to have them as a part of building the design, because at the end of the day you don't want to be in a situation where you visualize moons and stars in your head, and that cannot be delivered to the vision of the product that the product manager is holding on to. So whenever we are creating journeys, along with the first impression that we push it out to with from product managers, from all the stakeholders, dev team also is in like the hot list of this thing, because a lot of things change. And when you are in a product driven company, and you already have set guidelines that you're running behind, you already have developed components that you want to keep reusing to improve the efficiency of the team altogether, reduce the turnaround time of the development. So from that perspective, whenever we are creating design, we run to the development team asking if every component that we have designed, put in design, if whatever functionalities that we are looking forward to is implementable in the given architecture or not. And that is very important, because ultimately what happens is, even after the initial feasibility check and probably the perspective that Khurshid is trying to build, even frequently you are looking at the POC and developing every situation and seeing, the outcome, and parallelly the design is also getting built. At the end of it, everything has to be seamless. I don't want to get caught for the one odd component that I have put on my screen, which can't be developed immediately, or which get pushed back to the next phase. My experience altogether will not tie into one unified experience just because of one component which will like break the experience there and then. for that matter, let's take a button or a drop down, or probably a text box versus a search and select or an autocomplete, right? Everything that we're trying to put on the screen. And that's why I've picked it up from one of my very influential mentors, saying whenever you're putting even the smallest dot, the smallest pixel on your screen is your canvas, and when you're trying to put the smallest dot on it, make sure that it has got a purpose on the screen, and without which you should not be like, you should not be thinking again saying, why do I even need that? Can I get rid of that? So everything has to have a purpose, and when coming from that direction, regular connects with dev team in the initial phase of the design is very, very critical and very crucial. And sometimes there are different perspectives as well coming in. So when we are designing for a specific complexity, then there might be states, there might be errors that we must have not envisaged when we were designing, because we were not aware of that. But when they look at it and when they put their finger saying, now I have to write this condition, that is when they realize it. So then when we that then also a little collaboration is needed, a little firefighting or a last minute rundown is needed, saying this will be done this way. So I feel it is very important to, and I think in my earlier organizations also, we would just sit right beside next to each other and, hey, hi, how is my design looking? Does that look feasible? Will it be built responsive? What are the specifications that you would need to convert them into response? All of these discussions need to happen at every level. So crucial.
Yeah, exactly. And this is iterative, and it's not one go, right? You're getting it right. So it is collaboration, iterate, collaborate, test, assume.
Design is an ever evolving process, and
Yeah.
being a product designer, knowingly unknowingly, you have to step your foot in almost everybody's domain, saying, you give me this and you give me this and you give me this. So you are thinking in on behalf of other people as well,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you have the vision of the product, and now when you're trying to visualizing it, then all of them needs to come together. So if you want something, you have to go, you are the person who has to go and ask other people to think of it in this direction and give me some kind of input so that I can work on it. So my father usually does this. Do you know this or not? And I would not have a straightforward answer to that. I will never. I'm not the person who would say yes or no to it, because there are so many things that are continuously growing that everything is figuring out. Even life things, not only design, everything needs a figuring out. So do you know things, the approach how you can get there, but do you know it already? Probably not. So there's no yes and no black and white answer to that. It is always that little gray space in between where you do a little bit of research, you apply your thinking to it. And internet is so full of information these days that no indexing and no metadata is helping out anybody to find the relevant pieces of information and how it can be utilized. Your mind has to be trained and customized to being an index of what you want to look at. If you start looking at everything, then the entire time is getting consumed and no action happens. So that's why I kind of hold on to this thought, saying building the right perspective, tweaking the thinking all the time. All of these are the traits that has helped me a lot in keeping my mind in right perspective, right direction, and then figuring out what I want to learn and then consuming that content, rather than like browsing through the internet and spending a lot of time and getting nothing out of it.
That is
So,
lovely, Rupashree. And that is the reason why I did not bring the chat GPT thing in here.
oh, I know.
Because I think the other panelists have definitely touched upon it. But here I really wanted to understand the design perspective. And yeah, there are a lot of things in the internet which can make you more efficient, but that, the human empathy part in you, or the designer it's your own, and it has to come,
Correct.
and do a very good solution. Pragya, do you have any other questions? Because I don't see any here.
Oh, was the conversation so helpful that people don't have questions? I'm flattered.
I also think so. It was indeed very good, Rupashree. It was so nice.
I'm glad you said that, Kushit. I was like, am I talking too much on the camera?
No, no, no. You were talking just perfect. And I'm sure the audience were glued
I'm
to it.
glad if there are takeaways that people could take from this conversation, and you know the overwhelm of not coming from a design school or not knowing things enough is what I want to kill with this conversation, and say to the world that it is all about figuring out. Sometimes you want to focus deep dive, sometimes you want to focus parallel, sometimes you want to focus on something else, and it is all right to be in that state. It is
Right,
just
right.
to accept that and live with it, and has to be a conscious choice of yours that you can live up to and not keep repenting on it every time that anybody else pokes you there. So that's my goal of coming here and speaking to the newbies, whoever out there are thinking of product design. Wonderful space to be in. Please feel free to reach out for any questions, suggestions, opinions, feedbacks that you might need in this space. Always there for you.
Super. I mean, that actually cleared a lot of fear around, product design and how people should approach. They should not be, fearing about a degree. It's just your,
Block.
mental, yeah, yeah, mental block, which is blocking you, going and discovering what it is. So yeah, it was very insightful, Rupashree, and thanks for coming and talking to us.
Lovely, lovely Khurshid, lovely Pragya being a part of this whole panel discussion. I didn't realize I had so much meat in my brain going on, so much substance that I could, talk out loud. When you are in the room of doing things, then you don't even realize that there are so much thinking that has been there. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, and I'm glad if this could reach out to more people and there are more takeaways, and the smallest point, teeny mini contribution that I could make to their lives that they could excel in. All the best to everyone. Thank you so much. Thanks, Pragya. Do you want to have like your closing thoughts?
It was really a complete pleasure. Thank you, Kurshid, for moderating the session for us. And thank you, Rupashree, for taking out the time. And this is a certificate of appreciation from our end. And you can scan the QR code, and it will uh, take you to a dedicated Hall of Fame page, which is created for you, and with the recording of the session.